you doing today?
I'm doing great. How you doing, Arlene?
I am good. I am so excited to have you here. I have enjoyed reading the book. I have to put the book up. I don't know if there you go.
There
Change
it
Agent. I, for one, have to say I missed the afro.
is.
But this book was such a pleasure to read. I was figuring out how to introduce you for those who don't know you, but I think you've lived so many different lives. So I will just say you are an author. You were the first Black consultant at McKinsey, in Peace Corps, a professor, a dad, a dance instructor, which I loved that tidbit, and so much more. And I think above all, you are someone who's truly committed to building wealth and creating growth in the Black community. So it is such an honor to have you here today.
Well, it's an honor for me to be here, and I'm being very candid here. I've had nothing but great respect and for Mitch and Frida Caper, all that they have done for the many years, their commitment to social change and social investment. I wish there had been more like them, and I think looking back over the last 30 years that they've been involved, and if there had been more people like them, I think our society would have been that much stronger.
Yeah, I would say the same for you. I mean, I wish there was more Jim Lowrys in the world. So I want to get into it. I want to talk about your story. My plan is to spend the first half of the interview kind of going through some kind of key stories in your life. And then if we can spend the second half of the interview talking about creating wealth in the Black community and entrepreneurship, I think that would be great. I think the majority of our audience who is joining us today are folks who are interested in entrepreneurship. So they're their founders, they're tech employees. And for those who are not familiar with the K4 Center, a big part of our mission is to use tech, entrepreneurship, startups to help improve low-income communities and communities of color. And I feel like that is a lot of what you have done, Jim, as well. So you fit very nicely into our mission. So I have to start at the very beginning in Chicago, because that's where it started for you and for your family. I know, both your parents came from other places, but you kind of grew up in the root of who James Lowry is in Chicago. So can you talk to me a little bit about what was it like growing up in Chicago in the 40s and 50s?
Well, I think you kind of gave the right introduction. My parents were part of the big migration. And most people don't realize the big migration, what caused the big migration and the times of it. One was from Tennessee and the other was from Mississippi. And so they, like many other families from the South, saw a better way to escape, all the things that were being done to them in a harmful way, but also, more importantly, to have a different opportunities for economic growth. And I think that they came up, and like many of the families that, in our neighborhood, we were part of a new generation of people in Chicago. It wasn't always easy. It was always, a challenge. But I think what held us all together in my family and other families is that we had hope for the future. And like my parents did not go to college, but they wanted my brother and myself to go to college. So that was their goal. That was their purpose in life, was to put enough food on the table. And like I said in the book, we didn't eat out. We never ate out. It was one of these things. I eat out all the time, but I'm grateful every time I eat out, because my poor mother, who worked 8 hours a day, would come home and cook. And maybe we go out for a birthday, and that was it during the year. But the food was healthy. We grew up, we were able to perform. And I think that was when I look back on my early years, it was with a lot of fondness, of playing in the park, playing with other kids, growing up with kids, having these friendships that last for 50 and 60 years. And it all started in that neighborhood kind of, community of Woodlawn.
Yeah. And you specifically mentioned how Chicago at that time was so deeply segregated. And you had kind of a unique experience with that, going to a private school for high school, kind of following in your brother's footsteps, going to Parker. Can you talk about that experience?
Oh yeah, I mean, obviously Francis Parker had a tremendous impact on me,
Yeah.
And so we were fortunate enough. We were both scholarship students, my brother and I, and we were handpicked because we were A students in our public school, and they gave us opportunity. I don't think it hurt that we were both athletes. So let's put that on the table. So
three sports. Let's clarify this. 3 sport athletes. So you were no slouch.
So here we going from the south side of Chicago. We had to take 3 transfers, subway, this, that, and other. Start out giving ourselves an hour to get there. And all of a sudden you're leaving the south side of Chicago, and all of a sudden you're on the Gold Coast of Chicago, where many of the wealthy families lived, and many of their students went to Francis Parker. It tried to be egalitarian in the way they recruited people, but bottom line were the people who went there could pay for the tuition, and many of them provided scholarships for Bill and myself. But it was a shock. I thought I was smart getting the A's in the public school. Then all of a sudden you're in this very unique place where kids are reading Shakespeare in 5th grade, 6th grade, Chaucer, and things like that. I said, oh my God, And so I was embarrassed. I mean, I really was embarrassed of what I did or did not know. And but it's good. I mean, so I think the fact that we were both athletes, and we said, we're not going to lose this. We're going to take advantage of it, and we're going to learn from the experience. And we did. Many of the relationships that were formed, and I'll be very candid here. 5 years ago, we had our 50th, I guess it was the 50th anniversary of the school. 50th anniversary of our class. And I couldn't wait to invite many of my students and my fellow alums to my penthouse apartment to say I made it too. So, I mean, it was very important to have plans and being able to be a change agent and really affect other people, like you said, in low-income areas, and learning from that experience. But it was a challenge initially, just like many of the people that you and I know that probably went to many of the schools, prep schools, and a better chance they had a row. It was really a challenge for them. It was even a tougher challenge. I could go home, but many of them were going in Connecticut or New Hampshire, where all the prep schools were. And it was a challenge. But the good thing for all of us in the 50s, they opened the doors. We were never in those schools before. The Rockefellers and the Kennedys and a lot of people like that. The Bushes were in those schools. Bushes went to Hanover. We weren't in those schools.
And can you actually talk about, because to me, what resonated to me was that you said it was as simple as 2 people kind of deciding that they wanted to have Black students in this like highly prestigious school. And so to me, I think a theme that struck me throughout the book was just for you had these advocates or allies. And those 2 people very early on seemed to be like an advocate, not just for you, for your brother, but for other Black students. So can you talk a little bit about those 2 people who kind of made that decision?
Yeah, let me tell you about those 2 people. But I think, before I started talking about them individually, I think anywhere where we've been fortunate enough to go into situations or schools or institutions or even jobs, there were always the people, not always of color, that open up our doors. And so we got to be very cognizant how we got there. Mm-hmm. In this particular case, there was a guy named David Wallerstein, and he was the guy in Chicago. He was on the McDonald's board, the first McDonald's board, very first McDonald's board. He was on ABC's board. He was on this, that, and the other. And he was a very prominent Jewish, leader in the communities, very successful business person. And the other person he had that dinner with was a guy named Truman Gibson. And Truman Gibson was unique because Truman Gibson was 2nd generation Black wealth. His father created
in the 40s and 50s, right?
That's what I'm saying.
Early on.
Think about that. I mean, he was 2nd generation, and his father had Supreme Liberty Life, an insurance company. It was at that time there were only 3 Black insurance companies in America. There was one on the West Coast. I forgot the name of that one. There was one in North Carolina. And then there was one in Chicago. And people don't realize this, but John Johnson got his start at that insurance company. And John Johnson of Ebony, when he became wealthy, went back and bought that company where he worked.
Wow.
It was such an iconic institution. But here was young Truman Gibson, who was a lawyer trained at University of Chicago. He was a military person. He was in the White House. So he had been exposed to power. He had been exposed to how things function. And he was a very prominent person in his own rights, because he was able to get to the president at that time. Truman was the president and said, we have to desegregate the armed services. So you have these people, and that's why it had an impact on me. I mean, because I was in 8th grade and I saw this guy. He was handsome, and he was smart. He was witty, driving around a fancy car. But he was a model for us all at that time. His first was his father, but then he was a modern version of his dad, and gone overseas and been in the White House and used his power and his intellect to affect change. So that was one of my first both of them were my first model of people didn't have to do it, but they did it was the right thing to do. Like Frida and Mitch.
I was going to say the same thing.
They didn't have to do this. They didn't have to do this.
That was definitely, when I read that story, it paralleled my own story of, Frida and Mitch. How I first met them they were the donors for my scholarship at UC Berkeley. And I was like, it was interesting to me that, again, Jewish couple, Jewish family were so willing to help underrepresented folks go to Cal, not just go to Cal, but make sure you graduate debt free. And you talk about that couple for you also welcomed you into their home and made sure you entered through the front door. And how important that was. And to me, that it so resonated. Going to Mitch and Frida's house, being introduced to their world for me was the first time that I was around that wealth, and being able to see it made me think one day it could, I could be at this level. I could have a house like this.
Right.
And so when I was reading your story, I was like, it's so mirrored my own, even though thankfully there's not that many literal back doors, but I still think there's a lot of, back doors that Black people now are forced into, or not given that opportunity to see the wealth.
Well, I mean, we can be candid here. I mean, the door back in those days, in the 50s, I mean, it was blatant. I mean, you couldn't come through the front door unless somebody said, come through the front door. You had to go to the back door. Now, the doors are still closed, but it's a different kind of gate. It's more subtle. It's trickier, but your point is well taken. So we have to keep fighting the battle we're fighting in 2022, which is a different battle, but it's the same battle in the same way.
So let's move on to you graduate from Parker and you go to Grinnell, and you take one of your allies with you from Parker, who was with you at Parker. It's part of the decision-making process. And again, I was just struck by, there's a line in the book. You're like, I could choose a coach who was racist
right.
in a liberal town, or a liberal coach in a racist town. And I was very surprised with your decision. So can you talk us through that a little bit, why you made that choice?
Well, I mean, can you imagine, we're playing sports, right? So this is part of our lives. I'm academically driven, but sports was very important. And so the other school was Lawrence College, which is a great school now and everything. And they believed in many of the same things that Grinnell did. But in the town, Joe McCarthy, I mean, all you younger people should research Joe McCarthy. That's all I'm saying, because there's a lot of parallels here. You mentioned one parallel, there's another one. And so Joe McCarthy was from this town of Appleton, Wisconsin, where the college was. And Blacks could not stay overnight in Appleton, Wisconsin. So we had to get dressed in our basketball uniform, or people like in my generation had to dress in another town and then go to Appleton, play the game, and leave.
Mm.
So the coach, our coach, got the job because we had won this championship. So he thought he was going to talk me out of not going to Grinnell. And so he was doing it, but it was so blatant how they were going to make me feel good in Appleton, Wisconsin. It still felt very uncomfortable. So we've just made the decision that that was not going to be the place, not going to be our choice. And so we went to Grinnell, and the coach, before we finalized the decision, when we were candidates, he said, "God, we never had any Watusis here."
Yeah.
And I said, "Watusi?" Yeah. I looked at my partner. I said, "Let's reconsider what we're going to do." Because it was a coach. He sounded like he was a racist, right? Yeah. Let's get some more Watusis. Oh, Jesus Christ.
And this was the Grinnell coach who said
this was the Grinnell coach who was saying.
Yeah.
So for different reasons, and it was probably one of the smartest decisions I ever made in my life, we opted to go to Grinnell. And I think I shared this in the book. That same coach later confessed to me when he was dying almost, the impact that I and Jim had on his life and his family. And he admitted he was just the average white guy from Kansas who'd never been exposed to Blacks, didn't understand the plights of Blacks, didn't understand, a lot of things. And he really thanked me, and tears would run down his cheek. He said, "Thank you." And it was on almost his deathbed. So I think he learned, and I don't think I shared this in the book. He was the biggest advocate for me going on Grinnell College's board, being the first Black on the board at 29. He was my cheerleader. And so, sometimes these things happen. So I think all of us have to accept, some things they don't start the way we want them to start. But if we have hopes and dreams and we can work it out and be open to accepting people, from different backgrounds and different, orientations, it can come out better than it did, what you thought at the time.
And I think, it's very much, it speaks to your character too, because I think other people would have written him off like, oh, this is a racist. He can't offer me anything. And I think the fact that you gave him a chance and you were able to form that deep relationship with him. And I think so much it speaks to who you are as a person. And, as you said, it changed his viewpoint. Because he was able to actually, you were no longer, a Black person was no longer an other. I think he got to know you, and that helped shape that, his opinion. So I thought that was amazing.
I'll give you another insight, and this really says a lot about Grinnell, in terms of history, is that that same coach, he was a basketball coach, and I had graduated. There was another Black athlete from Gary, Indiana. His father was very involved with the NAACP. And one time he's having a conversation with his coach, and the coach said, "Wouldn't it be great if we could get Martin Luther King to speak at Grinnell?" Mm-hmm. And he says, "Do you think you could do it?" So his father called up Martin Luther King, and he brought Martin Luther King to Grinnell College to be the convocation speaker. Based on that fact, we were able to recruit Warren Buffett to be on the board of Grinnell College. When Warren Buffett saw Grinnell College had Martin Luther King as their convocation speaker, that was a thing, because he had a friend on the board, they were busy. But when he did that, Martin Luther King coming to Grinnell, that's why he went on the Grinnell board and served for 30 years. I served with Warren Buffett.
You sat right alongside him, right?
Right. So you never know how these things turn out.
Definitely. And I would be remiss if I didn't add, to me, what was one of the juiciest tidbits from your time at Grinnell. So you, in addition to playing 3 sports, you also had like 3 girlfriends and maintain a B average. I was like, I barely got through Cal. I didn't play any sports. I'm like, you must have just been amazing at time management, girlfriend management, basketball. I was very impressed. by that. I don't know if you want to share any about that story, but that to me, I had to read that part twice. It was a little bit salacious for me.
Well, I tried to keep most of that out of the book, but I let a couple of things get in. People say, Larry, why don't you tell more about your social life with that marriage? I said, no. This is not that book. That's another book to be published later.
Yeah.
No,
well, I will read that book.
Time management. It's time management. People are asking me now, I'm busy. We'll get into the second half, but I'm busier now than I've ever been in my life. And they said, how do you keep all these things? I said, time management. I think athletics helped us do that. I mean, because you had to practice at a certain period of time, you had to get good grades. It forced you to plan your day, your month, your week. And I've never, you mentioned McKinsey. That helped me at McKinsey. And McKinsey even took it to another level. But, same thing at BCG. We can't function unless you know what you're going to do. And as I try and be a good mentor to many of the young people, I always advocate. I said, remember, you're going to have a lot of things. You're going to have products, services. You could probably say the same thing to people you're investing your money. Yeah. But if you don't really respect time, time is the most valuable asset you have. You can't waste it.
Yeah. Well, so you mentioned McKinsey. So let's fast forward. You're at McKinsey.
Right, but you got left out the Peace Corps.
I know. Okay, let's dive into the...
You can't, oh, come on.
Okay.
Know where you come from and everything. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, no. So I love the Tanzania, I love the Africa, but I'm also just like looking at time. So, okay, talk to us about your time in the Peace Corps.
Well, see,
it was very early on, I should say. This was very early at the inception of the Peace Corps itself.
First year.
When you joined.
Yeah. No, it wasn't yours. It was the first year of the Peace Corps. The first Peace Corps volunteers came to Tanzania. And I was not a Peace Corps at that time. At that time, Grinnell College had sent me to Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, on a 50-year abroad scholarship. So there I am watching the first Peace Corps volunteers get off the plane.
And you have your $750 check.
$750 to last me for 12 months. And I had to learn, and you made an effort, but I had to teach social dance to survive.
I love that.
I said, whatever you do, I had to do it. But it was a great year. It was a year that the country became independent. At that time, it was called Tanganyika. It was not Tanzania. Mm-hmm. I was there December 9 in 1960. I remember all that. Mm-hmm. And so it left an indelible impression on me. So you got to think about it. You're leaving, the south side of Chicago, going to the north side, going to the Gold Coast. You have one thing. Then you go to Grinnell. And then you're in the middle of Iowa dealing with all the things you had to deal with Grinnell. And that was a great experience, but it was different. And then they sent me to Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. And so I'm there during the period where countries, it seemed like every week another country is going to be an independent. I knew all, and I'm going to have funny with the taxi drivers. I will be talking. I knew Ezekwe. Well, I knew, I met Jomo Kenyatta. And he said, what? Because I did. I mean, I was 22-year-old kid. I met all these people going through these different things.
Yeah, so it was because they were coming through Tanzania and using it as kind of a bed of learning about that independence process, right?
Absolutely. And Julius Nyerere was a great broker between the East and the West. So that's when I first got exposed to the East and West. I got exposed to North and South in terms of Africa, because you had many of the immigrants coming from South Africa who were in the camps. So I'm 22 years old and I'm getting all this stuff. And how could I take it? I go to the camp in Dar es Salaam where all the immigrants from South Africa are, refugees or people escaping really. And the guy pulled me aside and he said, Larry, be careful because you got a lot of people in here as spies.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I said, wow, and I'm going to be there. Jimmy smiling and grinning. He said, no, you don't know who they're dealing with, Yeah. So you saw the, what was happening in the world, between the East and the West.
You had a front row seat to it.
Front row seat.
Yeah.
And that changed me forever. You talk about diversity, you talk about Black diaspora, you talk about low incomes, and you really saw poverty. And you saw it, but the thing that I really, it's still, when I talk about it today, it had such an impact on me. You talked about, Nyerere said we have to have Ujamaa, which is going to be our form of socialism, and it's going to deal with ignorance, poverty, and health, and those three things are still with me. It doesn't matter if it's in Chicago or west side of LA. Those are the three things that are challenging us today. But he articulated it, and it just had a profound, but they were always smiling. No matter how hard it was, and you see these people get on the ferry going across the bay to die, it was always love. There was always a lot of friendship, and they embraced me as being this strange guy from America. Why are you here? And even at that age, he goes, "Why are you here?" And I said, "Because I want to help. I want to be a part of this."
And on your way back, you considered a career in the movies.
Yeah, I did.
For like a brief second.
Yeah, I did.
But it met Elizabeth Taylor.
Yes, I did.
But decided that wasn't the path for you.
Yeah, it's funny, but you went to Berkeley, so sometimes it's not right or wrong. You say, okay, if I graduated from Grinnell College, I'm not going to be a B movie guy. What the hell did I go to school for? I mean, but it was tempting because the backdrop on that story, I was going to go through Rome for about 2 weeks because somebody said they were introducing me to somebody, and she was in the booth. Most of you younger people never heard of Hercules movies. They were cheap movies they made in Cinecittà with the masculine guy with muscles and stuff like that. And so that was a big thing at that time. Cinecittà in Italy, they were making more movies than anybody. Now I know you like Indian movies, though. Now Indians make more movies than. Okay.
And you used to watch them, so I was just like, you were in Tanzania before there was subtitles, and that to me again, I was like, I loved you even more reading that. You were like, I would watch them, no subtitles with like your East Indian friends in Tanzania. Right. Like that was amazing.
And that's why I learned about the Indians. I mean, I didn't know about that. I didn't know about the different sects. I didn't know about the Muslims and Aga Khan's people versus some. I didn't know all that. So that became a learning process in itself, which has stayed with me for all these years. So yeah, I did that, but I came back to Italy. And they said, "Well, how long are you going to stay?" I said, "I don't know. I ain't getting no money." They said, "Well, you can go out and be an extra in Cleopatra." I said, "What?" They said, "You can be a cast." Yeah, they pay you. I think it was 15,000. Yeah, 15,000 a day, lira a day. Yeah. You could live high on 15,000 lira. Yeah. So I became an extra in Cleopatra.
Wow.
But then they said, "Well, you got to stay." I said, I think I was supposed to go back. I don't think I want to stay. But a lot of my people did. I mean, Sutherland, I can name people who.
Italy was a great place for Black people at that time.
Great. And then I befriended all these very talented people who were ex-Catherine Dunham dancers. And then I got exposed to their talents, on the Via Veneto. And they had their own show. So it was very enticing for a young guy. I said, "No, I got to come back home. I got to get another degree. And that's when the Peace Corps came in. And they recruited me. And the Peace Corps recruited because I had this very similar experience in Tanzania at the early Peace Corps volunteers. So it was great. My next job was great too. I was a training officer in Puerto Rico. So I got to know the Puerto Ricans. I know, I could learn their language in a way. And I met a lot of great Peace Corps people. I met Sergeant Shriver. I met Harry Belafonte. He came down to the camp and got to know him early on. We were much younger, all of us.
Oh, I love it. We have to talk about McKinsey though, because they're going to get me if we don't go into depth. So part of the reason, you came to McKinsey. McKinsey was at the stage they were building out their public sector practice, and so you had that experience. So talk to us about like, what was it like first Black consultant at McKinsey?
I think the other thing, what drove me to McKinsey was the fact that I'd been working in Bed-Stuy, Bedford-Stuyvesant Restoration, and Bobby Kennedy was assassinated.
Yeah, so doing community work there.
Yeah, and he was the one who brought me there. I mean, it was Bobby Kennedy because I was his host in Peru.
Yeah. And they took you through. I was amazed by the number of interviews. I think there were 7, if I remember correctly.
No, you're underestimating. No, they were 10 interviews. They were 10 interviews.
Yeah. I would have said no, thank you. I was amazed by the number. I was also amazed by your response when they told you you got the job?
Yeah, that's what I did. I said, what? I don't know if I want to take it. I thought that
Was it because of all of the interviews? Did that make you rethink?
No, I think at the time I had a television show in Bed-Stuy. I was feeling pretty good about living there. And, it's unlike, say, the people who go to business school and they set foot on the campus, they're thinking about getting a job at McKinsey.
Yeah.
I didn't have that. It was new. I had done my homework on McKinsey. Had been kind of exposed to McKinsey, but it wasn't something that I said, this is huge. Now, when I think back on my answer, like I said, did I really tell that man after 10 interviews and being the first Black at McKinsey, I'll think about it.
It was that story. And then the story where you're in the elevator with one of the prominent
founder.
No, he was he was the founder of McKinsey.
He was the founder of McKinsey.
Yeah. So tell that story. That to me was I love that.
Well, they take you aside, they bring you in, it's okay, here's the way he works. And I said, I'm new. I'm coming from being a community organizer in Brooklyn, right?
Yeah.
So they said, okay, we're going to give you this checkbook. You write yourself, you keep your expenses, you keep your own record, and then you write yourself a check. And if the 500 doesn't cover it, write yourself another check. And I'm saying, ooh.
Not too shabby.
I'm at 45th and Park Avenue. Yeah. So I'm at 45th and Park Avenue. They said, and if I were you, go to Brooks Brothers and get a Brooks Brothers suit. All of our people wear pinstripe Brooks Brothers suits. Mm-hmm. And I said, but I'm too big for Brooks Brothers. Brooks Brothers they have my body shape. Yeah. They said, but get you a one that looks like a Brooks Brothers. So I could do that. So I went out and got me three piece back in those days. Everything was 3 piece. We had fast. So I said, okay. But they said, the other thing is Marvin Bauer was the founder of McKinsey. And Marvin always insisted that you wear a hat and you wear socks over your cap and you wear Brooks Brothers suits. That's what a McKinsey person was supposed to do. I went along with all that. I couldn't buy that hat. I actually bought the hat and couldn't wear the hat.
Because your head was too big or it just didn't look good?
It wasn't.
Because for me, I can't wear hats because I have too big a head. So I was like, when I read that, I was like, does he have the same problem I have?
No, it just, back in the day, I was still out there single,
Yeah. It didn't go with the swag that you were trying to put on. It didn't go with
the swag. It wasn't.
Yeah, I got it. Okay.
It wasn't me. So I'm on the elevator, right? And Marvin didn't want to say something. It's just Marvin and I on the elevator.
Yeah.
He said, how are you, Jim?
The founder of McKinsey, you and him on the elevator, setting the scene. Go ahead.
Setting the scene. And so he says, how are you doing? I said, I'm fine. He said, everybody treating you right? I said, yeah. Yeah. And he kept looking my head up and down. And I said, is he going to say something to me? Yeah. What's good? I said, no, he's not going to ask me. And he couldn't take, he tried to prevent himself from saying it, but he couldn't. He says, Jim, does your head get cold? And I said, no, Marvin, it's my hair protects me. I said, oh my God.
I have my hair to keep me warm. Yes. I love that.
That's a true story. Everybody sees it in the book. I'm saying making these things up. They are true. And sometimes people will ask, did Larry do this? Did Larry say it? Yeah, I said it.
I burst out laughing when you said that. Because I was like, of all, what very few people with the founder of the company where they're working at would have, I think there was a lot of different ways you could have played that, but I love how you did it.
No, I did. That's what. But Marvin and I became very good friends. And when my firm was listed as one of the top 100 consulting firms in America, which was always my goal, I got a very personal note from Marvin Bauer saying, Jim, we're proud of you. But it's funny, but I'm smiling at you because you see certain things you got. But even all the people tell me what they got out of the book. This one guy I won't mention his name, very prominent guy in Capitol Hill and everything. He said, Larry, I read your book. And I'm saying, what the hell? What's he? Somebody comes up with something that really stuck with. He says, first out of his mouth, he says, you know what? You put in your book, and in your book, you asked the question, who was the first president of the United States? His name was George Washington. And in the book, and I said, okay, name me another Black by the name of Washington. So this guy, very prominent guy, who read the book, he said, Larry, I'm still trying to find another Black named Washington. So it's funny what different people take out of the book. I get a big kick out of it.
Oh, I love that too, because I'm like, I know so many like Black people named Washington. Like everybody is like growing up next to me where, in Hunters Point in San Francisco, our neighbor was Miss Washington. And I was just like, yeah, all these Black people are Washington. So I also love that tidbit too.
But anyway, keep going. You can ask me anything.
Anyway, okay. So you're there. And then, what struck me was you were the first, but a little while after a second person came. Trying to remember his name. Bill, is that right?
No, Bob Howard.
Bob. Okay. And so what struck me was, I think there could have been competition between you and Bob, like, hey, we're the two Black people, we kind of have to duke it out. But I think you guys formed this alliance between each other.
Right.
And almost like we call these like affinity groups now, but you guys were like in an affinity group of two. Yeah. So was that intentional? Like, is it like keep your enemies close, like that sort of thing? Or why did you, I guess, take that route with like, hey, let's form this like tight group and have each other's back?
I think, that's why, sometimes it's hard for people to read through the whole book. But if you read through the whole book, you kind of understand that that is the way I looked at people. Yeah. That's why Africa was important. I mean, I didn't look at people like, so when Bob came in, I just saw him as a brother. He was my brother. And we bonded, and our families bonded, and we took trips, to Jamaica together, and as kids, and then we would compare notes, and come up with what do we have to do here. And then he said, "Should I go to Amsterdam?" I said, "How are you? What's your standing?" He said, "Yeah, pretty good." I said, "Yeah, you got to go to Amsterdam." And the same thing with me in Tanzania. He said, "I got an option to go for McKinsey." And we over drinks. We said, Jim, you want to do it? I said, yeah, I think I want to do it for a lot of reasons. But in terms of making it at McKinsey, I had to put in those 2 years and he had to do it. And Bob and I was never jealous of him becoming the first Black partner because that's what he wanted to do. And he was a tremendous partner. And I'm getting sad now because Bob just died. He died 30 days ago.
Wow. I'm so sorry.
And we were friends all the way through. He joined my firm for a hot second after he left Ben and Jerry's, and so, he's a dear friend. His wife, his widow, is a dear, dear friend. I helped carry his daughter get into Kellogg School of Business. Their granddaughter is going to be staying in my house in Chicago because she's going to Northwestern Engineering. So these are what these friendships are. And we should cherish them and support them in any way we can, because we can't make it alone. And so even the other thing is, I just said, we got to this is a great place. Once I got exposed to consulting, I didn't know a damn thing about consulting. I didn't know about the power of consulting. I didn't know where consultants operated or how they operated. I didn't understand the influence that consultants had on leaders of countries, mayors, presidents, corporate leaders. And I said, we have never been there. We didn't know. And then besides, knowing how to do the decks and all that, you learn how to do that. You learn to research how to write. But it was just knowing the power and how consultants are very effective in affecting change. I had said, I got to bring in more. And that person recruited 19 other Blacks. Yeah. Because it was very important for me to let many of them come in the door.
Yeah. That to me, I mean, so much of that resonated to me because, I started in venture capital 10 plus years ago. And I was like one of the first women in venture capital, Black women in venture capital. And like for me, you talk about creating the path for others, first at McKinsey, then when you started your own firm, opening that door. And that to me was like so very important. I created our summer associate program at Cape Coral Capital because I felt like it wasn't enough for me to be successful. Like I wanted other people who looked like me to be given that opportunity.
Absolutely.
And I think so much of your message and part of one of your takeaways is like for your thoughts for Black economic wealth is switching from a crabs in the barrel mentality to like a supporting one another. So rather than being competitive, there can only be one. How do we uplift each other? So can you talk, I guess, can we move to today? Like, how do you see that playing out in the tech world? Do you see people, do you feel like there's more folks who are still in the competitive mindset, or do you see folks trailblazing and bringing up others behind them?
Well, I think the backdrop on tech, I'll praise you again, because what you're doing now, being, the leader of the next, slug of money coming in, Cape Coral, that is very powerful. It ain't been, you talk about, you started, but there ain't been a lot of you out there, and then I'll be honest. I mean, maybe because I was from the Midwest, maybe because I spent some time in campus on Harvard and places like that. When we looked at business, it was more the old way. You do long decks and pitch decks and all that kind of stuff, and they're 50 pages long. And then my good friend, Kobe Fuller, introduced me to venture capital. And I got to know him because he had this vision for his company, his called Valence, to create wealth for Black people. So I didn't know anything about Kobe. I didn't know anything about Upfront Ventures, where he was an equity partner. And I said, well, you got me at the door when you said this was your mission.
Yeah.
So I got into it, and then it's changed my life. It really has. I mean, I'm not saying I'm still not working with Fortune 500 companies. I'm still designing many of the programs for Fortune 500 companies. I'm advising, elected officials on this. I'm doing a lot. But, the special place I have now in terms of how I allocate time and energy and focus is tech and Blacks and browns in tech. Because better than I, 7 out of the 10 richest people in the world are founders of tech companies. Yep. So when you think about the change can occur, overnight, and the power that can, accrue to some of these people, so they make so much money they can fly up in space.
Yeah.
We ain't talking about 40 and 50 years. We ain't talking about 16, 19. We're talking about the changing world where technology is changing everything. And remember, I mentioned, Grinnell College, Warren Buffett, but the other person who had a profound impact on me was Bob Noyce. I was there when Bob Noyce left Fairchild, when Andy Grove, and went to the board, went to us just in the finance committee. Now I'm 29 years old.
Will you, for the audience, explain who Bob Noyce is for folks who don't know?
Okay, that's part of my punchline. So anyway, I will. So the punchline is Warren Buffett says to us on the committee, he said, Bob Noyce is leaving his company and he wants to create his own company. And I looked at his patents and I looked at his plan. And I would say I would not recommend any college or university put money into a trustees fund. But if any of you guys want to put money in with the understanding that if it is successful, that you will take all the shares and give them to Grinnell College. Two Jewish old men. They were older. They were in the 80s, 90s. I'm in my 80s now. This really hurts. But when I say that, but they were old. So they both wrote check $150,000 to this guy named Bob Noyce, who created Intel. Intel, the same Intel. When we're talking about time and power. The same and he took me there. I used to know Bob. I used to spend time there. And I remember he used to have this little cubby hole of an office. And when you out been doing the East Coast Harvard stuff, everybody got a big house looking over. Looking over the corner office, looking over park. Bob was in a little cubicle. Everybody could do it. Everybody walking around with blue jeans, and they're starting this is another world. This is another world. And then I saw that at an early age, and I never was a part of it, but I knew the power of it. And then, he said to me, he said, Jim, you got to understand, we have to be so competitive. Unless we come up and keep doing new things in this industry, we will go under. And so he had all these bright people. And then I looked out in the parking lot and I saw a lot of Benzes and V8. So the money was in the cars, but not in the offices. But Bob was this great impact on me. And now you fast forward, where are we today? They're putting in billions of dollars in Columbus, Ohio to make chips because we're so vulnerable to the Taiwanese who are making all our chips. Yep. So I'm just saying, I saw the power of that. But what motivated, and then Jesse, God bless Jesse. Jesse was making news about Silicon Valley, 10 years ago, and I was out here.
Are you talking about Jesse Jackson or Jesse who? Yeah,
Jesse
so
Jackson.
you had a little bit of a disagreement, I think. Like you communicated that you thought it's important for, like, the only way Blacks will truly be free is through like economic freedom. Absolutely. And he did not agree.
No, Jesse, no, that's not true. Okay,
Jesse, tell me.
Jesse, no, that's not the issue. Okay. Jesse was the only civil rights movement. That the King came a little later.
Yeah.
But all the civil rights leaders of my time never talked about economics. Yeah. Never talked about business.
Or building wealth.
Wealth. Never did. We're going to try and, make life better, and we're going to have new laws and the government's going to save us. That was the issue.
Yeah.
Jesse was the first one. Remember, he went down to Coca-Cola and signed this covenant, with which was economically driven to create more Black businesses and et cetera, et cetera. And he was very effective. At the height of his power, he was very effective because of Jesse. And it was really Jesse. He changed the whole automotive. He would go and talk to CEOs of Chrysler, Ford, General Motors, and say, blah, blah. And because of that and other things, I was a part of it. Detroit changed. Wow. And so all of a sudden, it had never been done anywhere in America that they were doing over $1 billion with minority individual company. And Ford was the first one. And Jesse got to get credit for that. No, Jesse and I was.
So, okay, I misunderstood. Jesse he's about that money. He's about that paper too. Okay, let me finish the last 5 minutes. I want to go through your 10-point plan to accelerate Black economic development. I felt like there's just some key things that, again, I believe in capitalism. I'm a venture capitalist, partner at a venture capital firm. Right. But this was just written in a way that so resonated with me. 1, Black leaders must accept those who control capital, control the country. And I put exclamation marks and all sorts of yeses next to this in my book. So can you just really quick thought on that?
Yeah, I mean, I wrote an article and it came on my experience in Brooklyn when I was a community organizer. And this young guy, he wasn't that old, and he said, Larry, we really know you care about us. You're Peace Corps. You really do care. But let me give you some advice, young guy. If you really, really want to help us in Bed-Stuy, he said, poor people can't help poor people.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
It stuck with me.
Yes.
Right? I wrote that for Sabor magazine article. He said, Larry, you got to change the title. I said, okay, capital affects change. But
poor people can't help poor. Say it.
Poor people, it's not that poor people can't help people, and they do the best they can. But when you're in America, anywhere in the world, I lived in Peru, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You can have the greatest aspirations, and Peace Corps volunteers did the best they could, but you're not going to change the lives of Peruvians if it ain't money, capital. And so it's the same thing in America. And what you just said, we kind of, depend on how you define it, we have not really been leaders or real players in the free enterprise system of America.
Mm-hmm.
It's been our
talk about how we control trillions of dollars of wealth, but we don't use it in the same way. And that's point number two, is that we control huge dollars as African Americans, but we don't use it the same way. And you specifically mentioned like Jewish people, Asians, like keeping that money within their community and using their spending power to control what their community looks like.
Right. We're making more money. We're consuming a lot. And that's why I give credit to many of the young progressive athletes and progressive entertainers who are now working together, reinvesting in one another, and now they're becoming billionaires. I mean, that's the way it's supposed to go.
Yep.
And
but
you shout out
Beyonce, Jay-Z, and P. Diddy for doing that, for, as you say, joining forces and guiding and help create wealth.
Wealth. I mean, you know better than I that when you get some of these things that you're going to put out, I mean, God bless you and others, but just be 100 times more of you guys. But when you put it out, you don't put it out thinking it's going to double. You're looking at, hopefully this will be 10x, 20x, 30x. It'll be another Intel. How many of us were even thinking about using their money to invest initially into these kind of things?
No. So what I will say is, I know my bank account is still learning how to do that. So I'm very, very happy with that. And I think that, for us, another point is Blacks must support well-managed nonprofits. So I think for us, Cape War Center, we have our nonprofit side, we have our venture side, but you talk about not just supporting that dynamic leader, but really supporting well-run nonprofits and the importance of that.
Can I say this, and it's probably going to get me in trouble?
No, say it. We got to say
it. Okay. Because of George Floyd, corporate America and others are now more in tune to the problems that have beset us for years. Okay, even when in the 70s and 80s, we saw movement, we saw programs being designed, we saw the National Minority Supply Development Council being created. But George Floyd, from my perspective, who's been in this for 40 to 50 years, depending on how you define it, really opened up the eyes for a lot of very progressive leaders who happen to be non-minority and want to do the right thing. That's the good news. Washington Post last week just came out with a major piece saying corporate's $50 billion promise. The question is, where is the money going? And nothing will hurt me more. Nothing will hurt me more is that people are going to quickly respond. First person come in the door with the handout. They give them the money. They blow the money. There's no impact. I told you it could get me in trouble. There's no impact.
No.
And the people are going to say, well, we did it in 2022. They didn't know how to handle it.
Yep. We gave them a chance.
We gave them a chance.
Yeah. No, that resonated with me. So I see that now. I see nonprofits who've done nothing. Like getting all of this, I call it white guilt money. And it hurts my heart. And then I see, Danielle, who's our CEO at SMASH, or Summer Math and Science Honors Academy. And I see the effort and the time and the intentionality that she puts into SMASH and the number of Black, brown students we've helped enter tech careers, and how hard it is to raise money because people are going for the flashy versus, as you put it, they're looking for those, charismatic people and not at the impact that the nonprofits are having on the communities that they serve.
Absolutely.
I was like, that's the language we use. So that resonated with me so much. And I'm so happy you said that. It's not just give money to nonprofits, but really look at that impact.
Can I put you on the spot?
Yes, please.
Okay, this is a very recent, like 2 days ago, because many of our elected officials who are my friends said, Jim, I'm running again. Can you write a check for, in this case, $20,000? I ain't gonna get it. And I said, I'm gonna tell you the same thing I tell all my friends who are elected officials, even my nephew, who's a county commissioner. I will maybe write the check if you can tell me specifically what you're going to do to foster minority business.
And that's point, I believe, number 8, right? Support leaders who support Black businesses. Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Why do we keep giving money to people? And it was so embarrassing. She could not answer the question. She could not. I mean, this is somebody who's been around for a long time. Could not answer the question.
Yeah.
And so I feel it's part of my journey now to say, come on, elected officials, you can always be. And I'm gonna get lambasted. You can always get reelected, being articulate, logical on the problems that beset our community, because there's so many.
Yeah.
So you keep preaching that and saying, here I am to save you. No, do that. But the other half of your efforts, your staffing, your investments of time and energy, and looking at laws about to be published. Okay, so now we talk about $1 trillion reinvestment in America. Have you seen our plan yet?
There you go. I say that. And I also think, especially when it comes to politicians, it's, I'm rooting for everyone Black, yes, but I also think that a lot of times our Black leaders are not the ones, as you say, with that economic plan. So in this last presidential election, I got a little tease. The person who I was supporting had like a clear layout for tech jobs and bringing them to the Black community. It wasn't Kamala Harris. As a San Franciscan who had seen her, I wanted her to have that plan. And so, I feel like we reached out to her saying, like, have this plan. And my hope is more politicians will realize that needs to be an important piece of their platform.
Absolutely.
It's like, how are you building wealth in the community? I think Obama did something. I don't think he went far enough, because I think it's different taking Blacks from survival to thriving. And I think that's what you really emphasize in your book. And we need to hold folks more accountable to how are you going to create a Black community that is thriving.
And reinforcing. I mean, if you go to that chapter, which is chapter 17, the key thing is what I tried to position why I was for this. And that was, what would be the impact if we did do this? How many thousands of millions of people we could affect? What kind of real partnerships between whites and browns and whites and Blacks and browns that could do that? How stronger would our historically Black colleges become? So it's not just wealth, is what do we do with the wealth once we create it? Yeah. We could do a lot of things that could change this. And it's all about, and I believe in the United States. I believe in the free enterprise system. And what I do when I'm on the circuit is try to tell the corporates, it is in your best interest as a business. It is your best interest, as a leader in your community, to make sure the things on the west side of Chicago or the south side of Chicago gets better. Because it ain't helping you, and it's not even helping Chicago now. And I can't even blame Lori for this, our new mayor. I can't blame her. This stuff was done way before her, but the crime is real. It is real. People are not coming to Chicago because it's real. You know what you're dealing with in LA. And so, I mean,
and here in the Bay Area as well. I think
same in the Bay Area.
That same thing. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's in everybody's long-term interest.
And what you say is like, we can't rely on the government. No one's coming to save us. We have to help each other, invest in our communities, help provide, those wealth opportunities, those growth opportunities in tech, because right now that's the booming sector. But just making sure there's a pathway. And I love that you end, the last part of the book is the message to the youth, because for us, our hope is that they'll create not only a world that's better, but an economic system that is better and benefits more individuals.
Yeah, and I said in the book, Parkland and that demonstration behind that.
Yeah.
It's interesting that they finally got justice.
Yeah.
But it doesn't bring back those kids. And I forgot how young those kids were that were shot. But when I saw that mass of young people, I saw the people on the stage, and I saw blacks and browns, and maybe this gets back to Martin Luther King, and maybe because it's giving my age away, but that gave me hope for the future. Yeah. I saw different, things happening.
Yeah. So I have to end there. Just a reminder to our audience, Change Agent, we are going to be raffling, I believe, 50 of these books out to those who came. We just touched on a few stories, just so few stories in this book. This was so great. I was laughing. I was guessing to it. Thank you so much for writing it, for living such a great life that inspired it. And I will leave, and I'll ask you to tell my favorite tidbit from the book is your connection to Stevie Wonder. So can you share that? Because that, to me, I love Stevie, and I that tidbit that you shared, I was just like, my mind was blown. I was like, no way. So you want to share that with the audience on our way out?
Yeah, I think I shared with the audience that I went back to Tanzania with McKinsey. And my daughter was born in Tanzania. And her godmother came to be with us at the birth of my child. And because I talked to Julius Nyerere, I talked to other people, we had decided to name her Camille Aisha Lowry. Mm-hmm. So she was Aisha until she went to Berkeley High School. Okay. So she was Aisha. And when her godmother went back to LA, she was dating the gentleman who walked Stevie Wonder on the stage. And Stevie was talking to her. He said, Sandra, where have you been? And she says, I was in Africa. He said, where? She says, Tanzania. What were you doing there? My goddaughter was born there. Really? This is Stevie. He said, really? What did he name her? And he says, Aisha. He said, that's beautiful. 1 year later, Stevie named his daughter Aisha. So I'm at a John Legend, event at his house. Stevie's there, and I couldn't resist. I said, Stevie, excuse me, I got to ask you this question. I've been telling this thing. I hope it ain't a lie, but that you named your daughter Aisha after my daughter Aisha was the year before because of Sandra Forney. Mm-hmm. He said, yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's really true. So I said, do you know what we did? He said, what do you mean? I said, you know what we did? He said, no. I said, we changed the half of America with all these people naming their children either Aisha, Moesha, Oesha, Traisha. We can mess up, we can take all kinds of stuff, but that's a true story.
Oh my gosh. I love it. Thank you so much, Jim. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for the time. Again, pick up this book if you're not one of the lucky winners in the raffle. I am so thankful for your work. I'm thankful to follow in the footsteps that you've laid for me and others like me. And I appreciate you, and I appreciate your time.
And I appreciate you and what you're doing, and God bless you, because keep it up, spread the word. And the bottom line, and not trying to put pressure on you, because you just almost closed your last fund. Once you do that fund, I will stand up on any mountaintop and say, this is what a brilliant young person could do, or you and your team could do. Please let more of us into this game. So I don't want to put too much pressure on you, but I know you can deliver. So I'm not nervous at all. So God bless you. God bless Mitch and Frida for having the wisdom and picking you and supporting you as you develop your skill sets to make America better. Thank you.
Thank you so much.